Julius. I didn't think I'd be getting Julius for some time, if ever, but he recently made his way out of the VIP portal and into my loving arms. And now, I've got him up to a 4-star, and we still have the potential to bring him up a little higher, so let's talk about him for a little bit. He is a beast and tank. I haven't worked too much with other beast groups, but he's got a nice buff for those that we'll talk about shortly. The first thing to look at, as I mentioned recently, he was VIP only, and there were no ways to get any tokens for him. But they had that big event. I was able to unlock him right before the end of the event, and then cross over to the next 4-star mark. So I had something like 97 tokens. Unlocked him actually in the regular heroic portal, and then used a couple more tokens to get him up to that 4-star. So that worked out really well for me. And the nice thing is they've left a couple of these levels. It seems like they're going to leave them indefinitely now, but it's not entirely clear. They could pull them back at some point. I will be unlocking Pinnacle very shortly, which will give me 3 to farm from. And if I do those consistently every day, especially since they're double, they have the potential for 2 tokens, one for each character here. I could potentially unlock him in about 2.5 months. So that would be a while, but at least it gives me a way to work towards him, and there are other rewards for those dungeons. Also, many times when they do these events and help to unlock a character, then they'll do a follow-up event after some period of time. So worst case scenario, if they keep this going, it'll be about 2.5 months. Better case, maybe they'll get some more tokens along the way in some giveaways or even through the portal. Alright, let's continue with him. Look at his background. Look for these traits. So this was an interesting one. He has this fully rested trait. So if he has full health, he has a 25% increase to damage. And the way damage increases work in this game it's still a little bit of a mystery, but they compound very quickly. So if there are any other bonuses that you can stack on top of that, it increases the overall damage much more quickly than the effects would have you believe. So that's a nice thing to have there. And then he has this Pack Rampage, a buff to the crit and attack for all beast allies. I've got him at level 20 right now, so that I could play with him and get to work with some of his skills and those things. He's got pretty decent attack and defense, actually more in the middle of the range, and decent health as well. So a fair amount of health here, so he can withstand quite a few blows potentially. The resistances are as you would expect. Here he's got that poison resist. Let's go over to the abilities. These are really what makes Julius particularly interesting. Partly that he's a tank and he's relatively hardy, so he's not taken out too quickly. But he has very good skills, and that really sets him apart. So this barrel toss gives the whole team a crit buff, which is really nice. And then he has this ranged attack for moderate damage and a chance for a random debuff. And we've talked about this before. When it says a chance for a random debuff, that's basically 100% minus whatever the resistance is of the player that it's being used on. So, for example, his resistances are 9% for most of the status effects, like freeze resist, disease resist. That means he's, for the same level character, he's going to have 100% minus 9% if their resistance was 9%. So just to clear that up, that seems to be the case for all of these. When there's a level difference, that tips it more or less in your favor. If you're trying to use a status effect on someone that's a higher level, it's harder to inflict that status. And if they're a lower level, it's easier. So that usually helps out a lot. I've got almost 100% success when I use these kind of effects on lower level teams. Let's go to the Ascend, and we'll talk some more about his other skills. This next one, Astounding Pounding, really does an astounding amount of damage. If you haven't already experienced it in PvP, that was the first place that I experienced the Astounding Pounding, you will see it, and it does an enormous amount of damage. So far, every character that I've had affected that he has attacked, from the defending team on one of my characters, it's taken him out entirely. It just does really a lot of damage, and then has a chance to daze, but so far that hasn't done anything because they're already dead. Which is really good for a tank. So again, he takes a lot of damage, and these skills can do a lot of damage as well. Challenge accepted. This boosted damage versus taunting enemies, a nice thing to have, especially for this kind of character, so you can more quickly take out those tanks that are taunting, and then continue on to the rest of the team that they were trying to protect. And then another buff to Pack Rampage. So I don't quite have enough Evos here to ascend. Unfortunately, Subterranean Evo is a popular one, and so I've used it already, I believe, on IGOROK, maybe some others. So it's kind of a shared with a couple of other characters, and I'm also saving up for Cruel King Bramble to use it with him. So there's a lot of demand there, and I'm not getting a lot of them in. So I can't quite get to his next level, but when we can, that'll be very useful. Let's talk about the skills that I don't have unlocked yet. His next skill is Monkey See, and it buffs his crit rate, and will have him do a follow-up attack on any ally attack. So if you have him, say, first in your party, and then, again, this is a character where it matters what position they have in the party. If you have him in first, you do this Monkey See, he's not going to do anything right away, but when the next character attacks, he's going to follow right afterwards and attack as well with that buffed critical rate. So there's a very good chance that he'll have a critical attack on that enemy. And if all three of the characters attack right after that, he will use that attack each time just for that one turn. But that'll be 3 attacks that he'll get to do. So very powerful there. He also gets a buff on the next Ascension for Fully Rested. That goes from a damage increase of 25% when he's at full health to 33% at full health. There's some other really good buffs for the nature class in general. You might remember Willow Swift does a 15% buff to the health of everyone of the nature class, and Tasumi as well has a buff to the attack for everyone that's in the team of a nature class. So that's those are some really good additional things that you can, putting these groups together to get some synergies. Unfortunately, these like Pack Rampage, that gives the benefits to other beast allies, but Julius's skills are so strong that he really stands alone in a team. Even if it's a mixed team and there's no other beasts, those skills are just very, very powerful. Another nice thing with the skills are that they have very relatively quick cooldowns. So for example, let's go back to Barrel Toss. And Barrel Toss has a 5-turn cooldown, which is medium, pretty quick. Again, if you're going through campaign mode, you'll be able to use it at least twice on most campaign maps, and maybe a third time. Astounding Pounding has a cooldown of 4 turns, so even faster. Again, it'll come up quickly and does a lot of damage. You could get to use it on a long boss fight more than once. And Monkey See has a 6-turn cooldown. Just, relatively good medium cooldown speeds compared to some other characters that might have 8 or even 9-turn cooldowns for some of their skills. The highest cooldown I've seen so far is for Archangel Emily. She's got a 20-turn cooldown on her Resurrection skill, so you're only going to get to use that once. Alright, well that's most of what we have to say for him. There's not a whole lot to say. Very powerful. Let's go kind of a quick recap. In some ways, he's he's like IGOROK in that he's got great stats. He's very hardy. He doesn't get taken out easily. He has really powerful skills that he can use. Here, maybe not quite as powerful as Polar Pounding, but the cooldown is lower as well, so you can use it more often, and that's really helpful. I think IGOROK has a cooldown of something like 8 turns. It's either 7 or 8. I thought it was 8. And then here, his multi-person AoE skill is down to just 5 turns, so that really helps out. So great in campaign mode, a great addition to a nature-based team if you're doing campaign mode, and you're going against a water team. Also, he's very good for defending teams. I've seen him used a lot of times, especially in the past. He's not quite as strong after the update, but still very powerful. Because of that, leading with the Barrel Toss that can do a good amount of damage and have a lot of status effects that are added on, as well as giving the whole team a crit bonus. So powerful there as well, and he's not likely to be taken out right away by someone like Willow Swift. So he works well there, and for a specialty team on offense, he can work very well as also. So a good all-around character, good to have. Hopefully you guys were able to unlock him, or at least many of you in that last event. And even if you weren't, you can work towards it, at least for the time being, with those tokens back here on these maps. So some of the upper level maps, but you can still work towards them. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching.